Welcome back, Petapixel viewers. It is Chris Nichols here, and we've got a very interesting video for you guys today because we are coming to you from lovely southern Alberta to play with the brand new Fujifilm Instax Wide 400. But it is an analog explosion today because we're also shooting on, look, the brand new Kodak Super 8 camera. We're going to be shooting around here, having a fun little road trip. It's going to be a good one. You know, Fort Macleod's always a lovely town to visit. You know what else is lovely? Actually, the sound of that Kodak Super 8 when it's running.
It is like, lovely. It just sounds like money being spent to me. But yeah, I'm sure it's satisfying for Alex.
And we're back. I hope you guys enjoyed that little montage on the Kodak Super 8, but it turns out that we're actually going to go back to the digital because apparently this film is really expensive. So, okay, here we are, back to the GH7. So I do want to say before we get into the Fujifilm Instax Wide 400, we really appreciate having our good friend Alex Mitchell's help. He has returned, he's been a guest on our show before, and he's helping us operate that beautiful sounding Kodak Super 8 camera. But let's get back to the camera in question, this Instax Wide. So it has been a tremendous amount of time since we last saw a Fujifilm Instax Wide camera, like a decade, right? Like time to watch Game of Thrones again kind of stuff, because they, didn't need to really change much. I mean, the Instax Wide in the past was a very simple to use camera. The image quality is actually quite decent out of the wide format. I like the fact that you get that beautiful 2:3 ratio photograph. So what's changed now in 10 years? Well, let's talk about the handling on this body first. The first thing you notice, this only comes in this sage green color. I actually personally like it, but Jordan doesn't, and I totally get that. I'm sure they'll release it in other versions here pretty soon. This is a fairly chunky camera, weighs about just over 600 grams. That's about a third of a Noct. The grip in here holds the 4 AA batteries as your power source, and I gotta say, the grip is big. Like, I cannot get my whole hand around it, so I feel like I'm really kind of pinching on there, just clawing on the very end, and so it doesn't feel super secure to me. So one thing I really do like about the Fujifilm Instax Wide 400 though is the overall fit and finish of it. I mean, everything actually feels pretty tight and pretty solid. I mean, turning the camera on is done just by rotating the lens collar there and it clicks into place nice and responsively. I also like the way that the actual controls are built. I mean, everything looks like it's got that little extra attention to detail. On the bottom of the camera, I want to point out a couple features here. So we do have a 1/4-20 thread. It's plastic, but this isn't the kind of camera that's going to put a ton of stress on it if used on a tripod, but it is heavily offset. I mean, we see that a lot on these cameras. I don't think there's actual space to put it here with the film cartridge right there against the bottom of the camera, but it'll be a little bit uneven. But there's this little cutout, this little square shaped cutout, and this is really cool because it actually fits these little plugs that come on the wrist strap, and you can fit them in here. And what this does is just kind of provides this interesting solid setup. So if you want to prop the camera on a table, maybe you're shooting up at a group of friends, it will actually prop it up there properly. You're not stuffing napkins under there or your cell phone under the lens mount like we have done. That's actually a really smart feature. Okay, now I want to talk about something I don't like on this Fujifilm Instax 400, and that's the actual frame lines in the viewfinder here. Because to be more specific, they're just not accurate, not even a little bit. And so this is what I'm finding. First off, you do have central spots. There's a central spot for when you're shooting further subjects and then another central spot for when you're shooting close up to correct for parallax error. And that's fine. I mean, that's accurate enough if I'm just going to always put my subject in the center. But I don't have issues centering my subject. What I have issues with is actually getting the framing and compositions I want on the outside. As a general rule of thumb, the Instax Wide 400 tends to shoot much wider than what your actual frame lines are giving you. So I'm finding this very difficult. I burned off basically my first pack of film just trying to get a handle on how this camera actually frames in the first place. And so as an example here, I wanted to use the close-up function, minimum distance, just under 1 meter. I'm using the smaller parallax corrected close-up viewfinder, and I framed it so this mailbox filled the frame. The numbers would basically go from the top left to the bottom right. But as you can see here, I'm still getting way more of the mailbox to the left side and above in the frame. So I'm not getting accurate compositions. So what this is making me do now is every time I'm shooting, I'm having to compensate for this, allowing for that extra space on two sides of the frame. And I'm finding that's really slowing me down. I got to take my time. I got to think about it. I get that a more casual user, they're just going to point and shoot. And if it's wider than what they wanted, no big deal. But for me, I am trying to get accurate compositions, and I am finding that very frustrating. Okay, so now let's talk about this cool little selfie attachment that we got here. So this is actually press fit right into the front of the lens. There it clips in place. It's basically a close-up lens that lets you focus below the minimum, just under 1 meter focusing distance for your outstretched arms. And then ironically, the mirror that you're using here to shoot your selfies is a more accurate viewfinder framing tool than the actual viewfinder in here. And so there you can see actually the results are kind of cute. You can get these arm's length selfies and even squeeze 3 people in there. All right, guys, so we've stopped here at Stronghold Brewing to have some excellent beers and also to test some of the features here for low light shooting. So first off, you do have a flash built into the Instax Wide 400. You don't have control, though, over whether it fires or not. Basically, the meter will just detect if it feels the light's too low, it'll fire the flash automatically. Otherwise, it won't fire it. I do wish that I had specific control over the flash. You see this on a lot of other Fuji Instax cameras, just a press button where I can force it on, force it off, or let the camera decide. So that's kind of unfortunate. I don't have that. The self timer control though is really cool. So I could just flick this switch down and I get these LED lights that turn on, and I get increments of 4 seconds, 6 seconds, or 8 seconds, or 10 seconds. And the further I pull that down, the longer it goes. And if I don't want to have that, if I want to turn it off, I simply turn the camera off, turn it back on, and the self timer is reset. Okay, so let's talk about the lens and image quality here on the Fujifilm Instax 400 wide. So this is a 95mm lens. We've seen this before on the wide cameras. Gives you roughly a 35mm equivalent full frame field of view, which you know I love. Now, when it comes to image quality, I mean, the wide Instax definitely gives you a big boost over the mini. I mean, sharpness is good, even though this is only a 2-zone focusing camera, either, basically 0.9 meters to 3 meters or 3 meters to infinity. I'm finding that, the depth of field is covering it. I'm getting good focus. I'm not having any problems with sharpness. So image quality wise, like all Instax film, photos do tend to come out, a little bit desaturated, maybe a little bit overexposed, and that's kind of the look and charm of Instax. But on a camera like this, I do wish that I could just dial in even a 1/3 stop or 2/3 stop darker exposure compensation. But unfortunately, this camera has no manual control whatsoever. I have no control over aperture. I have no control over exposure compensation, nothing that lets me control that. So I've certainly had a lot of fun on our road trip here in Southern Alberta with Alex and Jordan. And I have had fun with the Instax Wide 400, absolutely. It's just that I'm not its target audience, right? I mean, I want to have things like flash control, manual control. And what Fujifilm has decided to do here is make a camera which is very simple, very much a beginner product, but the price is excellent and reflects that. So I think that for the beginner photographer, this product does make a lot of sense. I get what Fujifilm is trying to do here, but I still think we could have had some basic exposure controls, some basic flash controls without, scaring off the casual photographer. I have to admit, I still had a lot more fun with the Mini 99 because of things like the built-in RGB lighting, the fun filters, and more manual control. And so this camera makes me very hopeful that very shortly we're going to see a wide version that has the same controls as the Mini 99. Well, I hope you had fun with us on our road trip. Leave your comments below. We always love to see those. If you want to rock our amazing merch, our beautiful shirts and hoodies, just go to store.petapixel.com and get yours today. And listen to the podcast, please. It's on this exact same channel, or just search for Petapixel Podcast on all your favorite podcasting apps. Check out Alex Mitchell's work. He does a great job, and we'll see you soon with more on Petapixel.